All right, today we are diving into one of the most powerful sonnets ever written, John Milton's On His Blindness. But this is so much more than just a poetry lesson. It's a raw, incredibly human story about what happens when the one thing that defines who you are is suddenly and just tragically gone.
No, really, just stop and think about that for a second. That one thing you were born to do, right? The skill that is you. What if it vanished? Well, that devastating reality is the spark that ignited this whole poem, and it's a crisis that feels just as real today as it did nearly 400 years ago.
So, to really get the weight of this crisis, we have to understand the man who is facing it. See, John Milton wasn't just some guy writing poems for fame or for art's sake. He genuinely believed he was a man on a mission from God. And when you look at his life, you can see this conviction was there from a really young age. Milton truly believed he'd been chosen for a specific purpose, and he eventually decided that poetry, his talent for it, was the tool God had given him to fulfill that divine calling.
You've got to understand, for Milton, writing poetry wasn't a hobby. It was his sacred duty. It was how he was meant to serve his maker, how he was going to make the world a better place. His entire identity, his whole reason for being, was wrapped up in this mission.
And then, right at the absolute peak of his powers, the unthinkable happened. The very tool he needed to fulfill his life's work was completely stripped away from him.
In his own words, this tragedy, his blindness, it struck him ere half my days, before he'd even lived half his expected lifespan. Can you just imagine the shock? The one talent he had, the very instrument for his divine mission, was now, as he puts it, just lodged with me useless.
And this line, wow, it just captures his despair perfectly. This isn't just him saying it's physically dark. For Milton, the whole world has become metaphorically dark. It's this vast, empty, isolating place with no purpose and no light. His connection to his mission, and maybe even to God, has been severed.
So as you can imagine, this catastrophic loss kicks off a profound crisis of faith. Milton doesn't just despair, he starts to question God himself. It's almost like he feels he's been set up to fail, and he is terrified of the consequences.
And this is where the panic really sets in. He knows his talent is a gift from God, and that to hide it, to not use it, is a sin. His soul is more bent, which means he's actually more eager than ever to serve. But he physically can't. And this leads to a terrifying thought. Is God going to punish me for failing a mission that God himself made impossible?
All of this turmoil just boils over into the central, agonizing question of the entire poem. He fondly asks, which back then meant foolishly or desperately. He's basically crying out, does God really demand a full day's work from me after he is the one who took away my sight? It's a question just filled with so much anger and confusion and pain.
But right as this desperate question is hanging in the air, something shifts. Before he can spiral any further, this inner voice rises up to answer him. And it doesn't give him a simple solution, it offers a radical, totally new perspective.
The poem calls his question a murmur, like a quiet, resentful complaint. But the reply doesn't come from God booming down from the heavens. No, it comes from patience. And that's really the personification of his own inner strength, his own resilience, stepping in to stop that murmur before it takes hold.
And patience offers this stunning three-part revelation. First, it gently tells him, look, God is all-powerful. He doesn't need your work or anyone else's gifts. His universe is not hanging on one man's poetry. Second, it completely redefines what service is. True service isn't about what you do, it's about how you bear the path God has set for you. And third, it puts everything into perspective. It reminds him of God's majesty, this king with thousands of angels at his command. Milton's personal mission is just one tiny part of a much, much larger plan.
And that phrase, mild yoke, that is the key to the whole poem. See, a yoke is a harness for an ox. It's a symbol of labor, of a burden, but here it's mild. Patience is saying that the best way to serve God is to simply accept the burden he's placed on you with grace and with strength. Service is acceptance.
This revelation leads Milton, and us, the readers, to the poem's incredibly powerful and honestly deeply comforting conclusion. He finds a completely new way to understand his purpose and his place in God's vast plan.
This chart just illustrates the poem's dramatic pivot perfectly. The first 8 lines, that's called the octave, they're all about his personal tragedy. It's all I, my, and me. But then, look at the shift in the last 6 lines, the sestet.
The focus moves completely away from himself and onto God's power, his kingdom, his will. He goes from being the center of his own small, dark world to being just one part of this vast divine universe.
And here it is, the immortal final line. After realizing God doesn't actually need his labor, he understands that there's more than one way to serve. While some are rushing all over the world on divine errands, others fulfill their purpose simply by enduring, by accepting their fate with patience and faith.
So, at the end of the day, Milton completely redefines what it means to be useful. He learns that true service isn't always about action, or creation, or these grand gestures. Sometimes, the most profound act of faith is to simply bear your burden, to stand still and to wait.
And that leaves us with a really fascinating question for our own lives, doesn't it? I mean, we live in a culture that celebrates constant productivity, the hustle, always doing something. Milton's journey suggests there's this forgotten power in patience, in acceptance, in just being still. What does it really mean to serve our purpose when we're forced to simply stand and wait?